How do we know what we know? This is not a question that we often ask ourselves. We take our beliefs for granted, but we don't really try to understand where they come from. And it is extremely important to realize where they come from, because some sources of knowledge might be more reliable than others. In this episode, I will break down the 4 main sources of knowledge. And at the end, I will reveal which one is the most used and therefore the one that shape most our beliefs. And this information might surprise you. My name is Kevin. I have too much interest, not enough time, and a drive to understand our world better. And there is a lot at stake in this topic, because it's very important to know what do we use to form our beliefs, and can we really trust them? Most famously, Descartes, a French philosopher, went through this exact experience a few centuries ago. And when he started to try to see where he can find certainty in his beliefs, he realized that he couldn't really know anything. Of course, we don't need to go as far as Descartes went, but we can start thinking about the reliability of these sources. And once we realize which places and sources of knowledge we can actually trust, we're better placed to be more or less confident on our opinions. Have you ever been certain of something because you experienced it firsthand? For example, some people say, well, I've seen it with my own eyes, so I know about it. Well, if you did, you gained knowledge through direct experience. This is what happened through personal experience, for example, or observation. Direct experience feels extremely convincing. If you see a stove and you touch it, and you see that it's hot because you feel warm, then you know that the stove is hot. But unfortunately, there are many ways for our senses to be tricked. For instance, if you're in the desert and you're very thirsty, you see an oasis somewhere and you start walking there. As you arrive at the oasis, you realize that there is nothing. That was simply an illusion. The second part of direct experience is memory. And of course, memory is not direct experience of the present, but rather recollecting moments and memories from the past. Again, for this one, we know that our memory kind of suck, so we know it is not extremely reliable. Some philosophers have thought that all our knowledge comes from direct experience. And that is the case, for example, of John Locke. He had the concept of tabula rasa, or blank state, which stated that when we are born, we are just like a blank state. There is no information that we don't have knowledge. And as we grow older, we have direct experiences that help us collect information about the world, and this is how far our knowledge goes. But there are many challenges with this conception. The first one is, as we've seen, these direct experiences and our senses are not very reliable. Therefore, most of our knowledge wouldn't be reliable either. When you buy a product or try something new, do you ask your friends and family about their personal experience? Or maybe you go online and you check at reviews from others. Well, you're not alone, because a huge part of our knowledge actually comes from other people. The most important part of social influence is called testimonial knowledge. And testimonial knowledge is to learn something from someone else. For example, you know that smoking kills. But if you were living on an island alone, you might be smoking forever and you will not realize that it's actually dangerous. But since scientists have investigated the topic and realized that there is an harmful effect from smoking, you know it as well. Additionally, you know that you shouldn't drink certain products because they would kill you, but you never experienced that firsthand because you would be dead. But since someone told you, you just refrain from drinking those toxic products. Another part of social influence is the social consensus and the cultural norms all around us. As it turns out, there are many things that we know about the world which are influenced by the environment where we're born. And those beliefs can be knowledge can be things that help us navigate the world, but they can also be simply traditions. And those have a huge impact on us or the society, because if you think about it, less than a century ago, there were certain countries that accepted slavery. And the only reason that we have slaved was that there was a belief in the society that it was fine to remove rights of a human being and to have a master which has a right of life and death on someone else. And we don't need to go as far as that, because we can simply see today there are countries where homosexuality is illegal or women don't have rights. So social consensus and cultural norms have a huge impact on our beliefs and how we interact with each other. And even though it is necessary for living in a society, it is very vulnerable to biases and misinformation, and we depend again on others to try to form our own beliefs. When you are trying to solve a math problem or you want to predict what's going to happen next, you're using what is called a logical process. And there are three types of logical processes that we can look at to arrive at knowledge. The first one is called deduction, and it is the process of going from premises to a conclusion. The most famous example is the one that states, all humans are mortal, Socrates is a human, therefore Socrates is mortal. Deduction is extremely powerful because it brings us to certainty in knowledge. However, it depends on extremely solid premises, such as all humans are mortal. Once it becomes more complex or more nuanced, we cannot reach a certain conclusion. The second one is induction, and I think this is the one that we see the most in our society nowadays and we trust the most, because science relies heavily on induction. Induction is simply drawing general conclusions based on an observed pattern. For example, you can realize that each time you see dark clouds outside, it starts to rain. Therefore, the next time you see dark clouds, you can predict that it's gonna rain. But even though nowadays we believe that science is this tool that can bring us to certainty and a better understanding of our world, there are still limitations to it. And the most beautiful example is the one from Bertrand Russell. Imagine that you are a chicken, and every day the farmer comes and gives you food. Since you were born, there was always the farmer coming and giving you food and leaving. Therefore, you're justified to believe that when the farmer comes, you will be fed. But one day, the farmer comes, you expect your food, and the farmer grabs you and cuts your head. I think that this example shows exactly the challenge of induction. So induction is great and it can teach us a lot about our world, but it is not a perfect tool that allows us to reach certainty. And the last logical process that we look at is abductive reasoning. This one is a bit like being a detective, collecting evidence and trying to infer what is the best explanation for this evidence. For instance, if you go out in the morning and you see that the streets are wet, you might reach the conclusion that it has rained during the night. To summarize, reasoned thinking is a great tool that humans have at their disposal to try to better understand the world. But there are also limitations such as those premises or the challenges of trying to predict what is going to happen in the future. And the last category that we're looking at is what happens beyond reason, where we believe things but we don't have strong evidence for it. And this one is pretty straightforward. It could be, for example, your intuition. You make decisions and you have beliefs based on what your gut feeling is, for example. Another one is faith. Many people believe in a god or gods, but they don't have objective evidence for that. However, they rely on faith to support their beliefs and knowledge. And so some of you might think that this cannot really be considered as a source of knowledge because it is not bringing any certainty. But as we've seen, the other methods are not bringing certainty either. And if we're looking around in our world, we can see that many of our beliefs are actually influenced by things we cannot prove. For example, with religion, in certain countries, most of the population believes in a divinity, even though the process that they use to reach this conclusion is faith only. So here we are. We have the four main categories of how do we acquire knowledge, which are direct experience, social influence, reasoned thinking, and beyond reason. And now I can finally reveal which one is the one that we use the most to generate our beliefs. And it might surprise you, but this is testimonial knowledge. Most of the things we believe and we know are based on what others are telling us. So what do you think? What is your first reaction knowing that we depend so much on others to make sense of our world? Additionally, are there any methods to arrive at knowledge that I might have missed? Finally, now that you know about all these methods, is there one that you use to generate certain beliefs? I would love to hear your answers on that and additional questions in the comments. In the next episode, we will look at the challenges that come when we depend so much on the information from others to generate our beliefs. And we will try to answer the question, are we all sheep? See you on the next one.